All right.
All right. Hey, Cody, how's it going, man?
Good, Pedro. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Of course, dude. Thank you for taking the time of your day to come onto the podcast, dude. I'm
Of
excited for
course.
this. Um, before we do get started in the topic, give us a little background of who you are, what you've done in the past, what you do currently, struggles, failures, etc.
Yeah. Born and raised in LA. Uh, I'm a freelance photographer and videographer. I've been basically doing it freelance since I graduated college. I worked as a photographer in college as well. So I've been pretty consistently just doing it since kind of picked up a camera in high school and just kind of never stopped and just kept the ball rolling and learned new skills. And uh, it's been a crazy journey to get to this point so far. But I think the biggest thing for any creative really is just you have to be consistent and you have to stick with it. So um, been doing that for quite some time now. I love to travel and basically just kind of hoping that this coronavirus gets taken care of so we can all kind of get back to work and doing what we all love.
Yeah, man, I feel you on that. That's good. We met each other, what was it, probably a year and a half ago or some,
Yeah,
maybe a year
around
or
there,
something.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, we met at
And
that
it's
marketing
funny.
event.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because I was actually talking about starting the podcast back then, right?
Yep.
So you see how even me going through the struggle of like putting the pieces together, gaining the confidence to put my voice out there, etc., and creating the space. But I think it's good that you kind of had the ability to like see that, because even
hmm
when I texted you to come be a part of this, you're like, dude, like I was happy to see that, like you took action and you started it. So
Yeah, I think,
pumped.
and I think that's one of the biggest things is just like speaking it into the universe. Like you got to that first step is writing it down, saying it to someone, whatever that uh, initial expressing that you want to do something. And that was pretty cool to kind of have that conversation with you like a year ago about you having this
Yeah,
idea, and then now it's happening. And what are you like 3, 4 in or something like that?
yeah. This today I released the fourth episode. So yeah, we're 4 episodes in, 4 weeks in. But it's crazy. It also helps like build accountability, right? Because like once
Totally.
you start telling people, it's
Yeah.
like, dude, you gotta own up to it, or you better have a really good enough excuse not to
Yeah.
do it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
but the reason why I chose this topic, right, which is, why, how can we individuals, just become more authentic with our work, with our lives, and just with how we see the future in ourselves, um, and really accept who we are. That's what I really think is the answer. Like at the bottom, like once you accept who you are, you can be more authentic with the people around you and your work. But it's something that even me going through the transition, right, of like having marketing endeavors, working the real estate industry, from property management to short-term rentals, um, it's not easy for you to identify and find a way to make your stand out and really put your soul heart to your work, because a lot of times we look at work from the perspective that it's just something that we do to pay our bills. And I feel like that view of work has been installed in society as a whole. And many people come out of like college or high school and they're like, let me just get a job to pay the bills, or let me get a job who makes the highest
Right.
income, because
Right.
that's what they assume it's what's going to bring them fulfillment. But in reality, I learned that the tough way. But how do you see that? Like, how can someone like you, a creative, or anyone that you've come in contact, really be able to be more authentic with their work and who they are as well?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to kind of look at yourself before even thinking outwardly on how to express yourself authentically. I think it's you have to look at yourself and think, why are you doing whatever path that you choose, whether it's being creative, whether it's real estate, whether it's starting a business, any path that you choose, you have to look at it from kind of intrinsically, why why does this excite you? Are you passionate about it? And then from there, you can kind of look at each step along the way and think, okay, how can I express myself in a way that comes across to other people saying, oh, he really loves this. And I think that's kind of like the base, at least when I was choosing whether I wanted to do photography, or really for me it was kind of between doing photography or culinary school. So I was kind of in a relatively like creative path. It was just kind of which outlet did I want to choose and then, stick with. So for me it was kind of which one did I see I could do for a long period of time and continue to grow and enjoy it. Because I think the biggest thing is, if you're trying to be authentic and you don't love it with a passion, it's gonna show that to, like, other people are gonna see that, and they're gonna feel that it's not authentic. So I think that's
Mm,
kind of the biggest thing, is you have to love it.
yeah, I agree with that. That's crazy the way you put it, because it really matters how you relate to the work you do,
Hmm.
and if you actually see it bringing value to someone's life or even to yourself. um, and if you can't relate with that, that's why it's okay if your job can make you a lot of money. But if the focus is there, you're gonna always look like a salesman.
Right.
You're never just gonna be someone that maybe is a salesman but actually loves what he's doing or what she's doing, and therefore the customer, they're going to see that authenticity, and they're going to see that they feel valued when they come to you, right? And
Yeah,
they feel
absolutely.
valued, they feel like you poured your knowledge and your expertise into the work that you've done. And I feel like when I look at my generation, millennials, I'm 21 now. um, there's not much of this talk being discussed. Usually the talks is either if you're right before going to college, what college you're going to, or in what you're going to study. But there's no talk about like why are you going to do what you're going to do, right? It's like people forget that. It's like, oh, my friend is doing this and he says he can make 200K a year. I'm doing that.
And I
It's
think
like,
that's the
no,
big
like stop.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think that's one of the biggest things, is that, you know, from a young age, we're kind of taught this system of, you get good grades in high school, you go to a good college, you pick your
Hmm.
major, graduate, and you find a job in that major. And that's I think that's a little bit antiquated at this point. And I do think it's changing, especially with this time of social media, where people are at least seeing, you know, contemporaries or people relatively in the same age group doing all of these crazy exciting things and making a living off of it. So I think that idea is shifting slowly, but I still agree with you that the system put in place is one of that, of you kind of go up the hierarchy of this kind of, do good in school, you go to college, you get a job, and then kind of they never have you think about what's
Yeah.
after that. Like, what do you do once
Mm.
you get that job that you took a major in college, or whatever that is? So I think that's a really interesting point of, you know, why do why does that still exist in a time where that's not necessarily the way that the next generation is going to become successful?
Yeah. And it's like even in our generation, it's kind of like, as you said, the outlets and social media and all the professions or ways of generating income and making a living have, doors haven't been opened that were never thought to be possible
Right.
before. And it's like that's become vivid to like our generation's eyes, and even people that are coming from older generations,
Yeah.
they're picking up on it. So it's not like people don't know, but still there's this like, there seems to be like this deep sense of like understanding of old times and how, you know, oh, you're gonna go into business, you need to have a script, you need to think, you know, the intro and the pitch and then the close. It's like,
Hmm.
and you're gonna take that, you know, that approach. It's like, no, like people, they're not only just buying products or services anymore. It's not how consumers work, right? They're analyzing the company, they're looking at what you stand for and if you actually care for what you're doing. And that's what sells the most, right? If we can mention someone like Gary Vee,
Hmm.
and for example, he's all about the free content. He doesn't, you know, giving without expectations. Great, he stands for that. But that way of being already attracts more people because they're like, wow, like someone is doing this and he's not making any income from it. Like, I want to work with this guy, because if he can work with no making income, imagine how much he can do with with income, right?
Right.
And so it's like it becomes like the shift where people, they're looking more towards authenticity. It's like, what makes you unique, right? What differentiates you from the rest? And are you competent enough to deliver a work that it's actually valuable? Or are you just there to make your, you know, your piece of the pie of the
Hmm.
transaction that you go into? Is that the only reason? Because if so, as you said, people are going to notice it. Not, you know, you might be able to get some clients here and there depending on what you do, but you know, if you really want to expand and scale and become better over time and more known for what you do, you will need to find a way to be unique. And I don't think that uniqueness is something that you're going to look for outside. Of course, you can learn from other people in your industry doing stuff, but essentially there's going to be something that's going to come from you, and it's going to be original to you. And that's what's going to make you, in a way, even more money eventually, because
Hmm.
you're gonna find your audience who can see that you have that uniqueness that other artists or other professionals in your industry don't.
Yeah, and I think one thing a lot of people miss in this whole kind of postmodern way of being authentic and unique and all of that is like, you brought up Gary Vee. He's a great example when he talks about this whole thing of being authentic and your own person and all of that. It doesn't happen overnight. Even if you as an individual are extremely authentic in your personal interactions, to become an authority or someone who people look up to for whatever you do, whether it's marketing like Gary Vee or being a photographer or being the best real estate agent, whatever it is, it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a process. And I think a lot of people see, especially in this social media world, see the end result and they want to just skip steps and go from I'm 21 years old and now I'm Gary Vee. Like, it doesn't work that way. You know,
Yeah.
he talks about how for however long it was, a, a year, 3 years, whatever it took him, he, you know, went on social media and was extremely active every day, posting things consistently, responding to everyone. And over time, that authenticity, or at least belief from others that he was the guy, took years for him to kind of
Yeah.
cultivate that brand and
Yeah.
image of being this authority in selling and being authentic to himself. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people
That is
miss
true.
in this whole thing.
Yeah, because that's really true. Because look, social media, in a way, it opens up the doors to other endeavors that people can take and other opportunities that weren't available before. But at the same time, it does also give you the ability to use it as a marketing perspective and
Hmm.
sell people like the best aspects of being a photographer, the best aspects of working in real estate, the best aspects of having your own business, etc. And the problem with, which I think comes back to the point that people forget to ask themselves deeper questions like why I want to do something and what I want to be remembered for, or how do I want to impact others more. It's sometimes becoming a little bit less selfish and a little more selfless, and thinking more of the people that you're going to be serving through your work,
Hmm.
because essentially that they're the ones that are going to make you the money that you're,
Right.
let's say, quote unquote, looking for. So if you actually want to, here's an idea to you: if you actually want to make more money, focus on them and not on the pleasures that you want to receive from doing the work, because
Hmm.
that's not going to make you the money, because people are going to see you as selfish and they're not going to work with you. But the point is, it also opens up the doors to this, luxury lifestyle and all the end results that come from,
Right.
our work activities. And I feel like, um more postmodern generations, millennials, post millennials, they love that, because a lot of them are, they have insecurities, and they want to cover it up by, looking at all his friends, and or her friends, and they're like, look, I got this. Or they're already envisioning them having the end result and how good they would feel, but they
Hmm.
don't know that the process is like crushing sometimes, because you're going to find out things about yourself that you didn't know. You're going to find out things about your industry that you didn't know.
Yep.
And essentially, you may later on decide, wow, I need to adapt, or I don't actually like this. It's a process. That's why I think it's very hard to take a commitment to do something for the rest of your life completely out of, high school or college, um, because it's hard to know who you are really at that point in time, right? You're still picking up and absorbing things from externally from society, and you're trying to build up your little map of where you want to travel to. So I
And I
think
think
that.
that's okay. I think it's
Mhm.
okay to not know. I mean, I think I was incredibly lucky to find, my passion so early on and stuck with it
Yeah.
over these years. And I think one of my favorite things to do is to go back like 6 years and look at like old photographs that I took and just be like, wow, this is crazy to see how far I've come from, me being 18 years old to now 26 and seeing like the growth. And I think that's another thing that people get kind of lost in this whole like journey of becoming successful or picking something that they're passionate about and all that is like they have their start time and the point where they think they want to get to become to like, okay, I made it, I'm here, I'm successful, I'm happy, all that, and forget to kind of look back at the journey and see like the small victories and the
Well,
small goals that you have to kind of place along the way, or it's really hard to become so consistent with something if you just have the one end goal in mind and that's it. Because if you don't stop and look back at what you've achieved up to this point, it's super easy to get discouraged. And a lot of people give up on their ultimate goal because they think it's taking too long to get there, or they've had some failures, or things didn't turn out the way they thought they were going to be, or they had to make some adjustments and all that kind of stuff. And I think the biggest thing is you have to be okay with yourself that those things are going to happen, and you just got to ride it
yeah,
all the way through to get to the end.
yeah. One word to summarize all you said is the process, right? It's the game.
The process.
In
Absolutely.
other words, is you gotta love the game.
Hmm.
You gotta love the process, because even the Cody which you are today, Cody, with all the knowledge they've gathered and performed and gotten better with, you wouldn't be there currently if you didn't go through all the, I'm sure, struggles mentally
Oh, for
in your
sure.
work that you've been through, because they shape you, right? And that's
And
how
you,
even you build authenticity, matter of fact,
yep.
because
And
you're good. Yeah, go ahead.
if you don't, everyone makes mistakes and everyone has failures along the way. The biggest thing is that you learn from them. I think all the most successful people in any industry, sports, business, creativity, anything, they've all had failures. And if you listen to any successful person in the field that you're passionate about, they'll tell you that they've messed up and they've had failures, but they've learned from every single one. And that's the
Hmm.
biggest thing. And I think a lot of people get discouraged and kind of don't reflect back on what the mistakes were, and instead try just to avoid that happening again, instead of looking at it and kind of analyzing and say, why did this happen? Why was this client mad? You know, was it my communication? Did they have unrealistic expectations? Did I not manage their expectations? All of those little things are things that I personally, as a, you know, business owner, have learned, especially in a creative field where if you go to school for it, or you're, you know, spending all your time learning your craft, I think that's super important. But the one thing for me as an individual, you know, I went to school, I learned a ton of stuff about being creative, you know, different skills in that field, but I did not learn how to be a business person. And that was the thing that I had to learn myself from others outside of school, and my own mistakes of,
Yeah.
you know, being a kid, being a photographer, but not understanding that you're a business person, you're an entrepreneur at the end of the day. And if you don't have those skills, or at least cultivate them over time, you
Mm,
can be the most talented photographer in the world. But if you don't have those basic skills and how to write contracts, manage expectations, all those little things, you're not going to be successful, because that's one thing that a lot of people, especially in the creative industry, lack, which is okay, but you have to be
mm,
just as passionate about learning those things as your craft, which I think a lot of people lean towards one
yeah.
or the other too much. And it's a really fine balance of being able to do both.
Wow. That's crazy because I was even talking with a friend of mine about that, right? Because creative industry, we're talking with a lot of creative mindsets, creative minds, entrepreneurs, and a lot of lateral ways of thinking, right?
Hmm.
They're not administrators, managers, conservatives ways of looking at things. And the problem with that is that you lack the aspect of business, right?
Hmm.
And the aspect that, okay, you may be a photographer, you may be whatever, niche in creative work you are
Right.
in, you're gonna need to learn how to sell that if you want to make
Oh
a
yeah.
living off of that. Otherwise, you're gonna need a part-time job, and you're still gonna be able to do your creative work, but you're gonna need to something to pay your bills. So
Right.
if your ultimate goal as a creative person is to you know be living off of the thing that you're very passionate about, you will need to either partner up with someone that has the knowledge in business and can take care of that for you, or you will need to pick it up. And you mentioned like you need to be equally passionate about. um, I agree, but also at the same time it's like a lot of creative mindsets, they will not like to learn that aspect, like
Oh no. And
contracts. Yeah.
personally, it's not something I enjoy, but it's
Yeah.
something I know is a necessity. So
Yeah, exactly.
but that took a little bit of, you know, maturing and understanding. When I first started, my mindset was so narrow, where I was just like, I just want to take great photographs, which is something you
Which
need to want to do. But how are you going to get someone to pay you to take a great photograph if you don't have any skill in, you know, negotiating a contract, figuring out the details? You know, if you're producing a shoot, you have to do that as well. You
Yeah,
have to
you're
learn how to pricing. You
pricing
have
your
to learn how to
service.
direct the, not only the talent, but also the client, and understanding when I get hired to do, let's say, some corporate video for a company that has zero background knowledge or understanding on how a creative process works, I have to also educate them. So at the end of the day, and when I'm giving them a final product, they know the process. So I'm not just giving, say, okay, here it is, it's done, and then they have all these questions of, why did you do this? Why does it look like that? How come this is like this? And so that's something that I've learned from mistakes with previous clients,
Mhm.
is if you're not only creating something for them, you're teaching them why you're making the artistic choices you are. So at the end of it, they have enough knowledge and information on the process that you're not fighting them every step of the way, because they might
Yeah.
have a different vision in their head versus what you can realistically complete, as well as, you know, other expectations in terms of
Wow, that's good.
how long it takes to get something done, you know, why you would do something at
Yeah.
this time of day, all of those little things that, as a creative person,
Hmm.
saying like this lighting is better, all of those, fine details, you have to educate the client so they understand that. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, a really big skill um, that a lot of creatives lack in terms of being a teacher. You have to teach your client.
Yeah, and as you said, right? You've learned to do that because you failed along the process. Because it's something you develop, right? It's not something that you're gonna like read a book and you're gonna go out and you're gonna be able to do
Right.
it. Because here's the thing, you're gonna have things that are specific to your work. So you're gonna need to learn how to communicate better and set better expectations. So because there's nothing worse than working with someone or being in a relationship with someone and you guys not being on the same page.
Right.
The amount of grudge that it builds up, the amount of like, what should I say, what is her thinking, right? Even in a relationship with a girlfriend, like it's the same exact thing. Like you need to know how to set expectations, right?
Yeah.
It is negotiating at the same time. It's the
Yeah.
same exact process. um and to me, like the way that I've realized how I've been able to become more of who I actually am myself, and not just trying to like do things because others see me doing it, or because I want to impress others, etc., right? Was that I needed to become more assertive with the values that I the core values of who I am and my work and why I do what I do, right? And a lot of times I feel like we can get bombarded with offers that are not related to our values, and we can give up our values in order to make some quick money or whatever it is. And I feel like that has negative effects long term, because once you like allow one thing to happen that you shouldn't, it's like a domino effect, right? You just allow one, and then two, three, four, five, and when you see you've lost track, your authenticity is falling apart. Everything that you've built up to now seems like it doesn't have value anymore. So how do you see like remaining true to to what you do and what you represent and what you see in terms of vision, not just for your work but as Cody, um, and being assertive to that, meaning that you're always going to try to live up to those principles? How do you see that that has helped you become a more authentic person in your work and in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think you mentioned, these things of, being assertive with your choices and valuing, certain parts of who you are or why you do things absolutely doesn't only apply to your business or, that side of you. I think it runs through your entire core. And if you don't apply that type of thinking to not only you as yourself living your life as well as your business, it can just lead to bad habits. And like you said, once you it's really hard to stop a bad habit once you've been consistently doing it. So,
Yeah.
and I think as a creative, it can be really difficult to, value yourself and your skills and your worth, because, you know, speaking specifically on the creative industry, um, it's very oversaturated. So, like you said, being able to be authentic and sticking out as an individual can be extremely difficult. So, not something that, takes time to build those habits as well. And I think a great way that I've kind of figured it out is, even if you have, let's say you have a belief or a value of saying like, I value myself at this point, and if someone offers me a job and it's below that, you have to sometimes put your foot down and say, look, I'm worth more than that. You have to word it however your conversation is going. But at the end of the day, that's something really hard to do, especially if you're just coming up, you're trying to get noticed. Um, all those type of things can be really difficult. And uh, sticking your foot down especially when you get offers that you know are below your value, can be tough, especially if you need the money. There's been times where, I've been offered a job and I know it's way below the value of not only how much time and effort it's going to take to get that job done, but also, you know, sometimes it hurts when someone undervalues you and you know how much your value is worth. So getting back to that, making choices based on that is sometimes you have to put your foot down and just say, you know, turn down jobs or whatever the thing may be, not go out that weekend with your friends because you have a goal of waking up early that next day and working out or whatever it is. Life is going to
Yeah.
keep coming at you and you have to make those decisions to that will ultimately get you to your goal. So that's kind of another thing going back to what we were previously talking about of, making those small goals along the way. And uh, it can be tough with all of these outside voices and noise and, financial burdens and all of that kind of stuff. And you have to just kind of take it one day, one job at a time. And over time, you'll get to that point where if you put out into the world that your value is at this level, but you constantly undermine yourself by accepting things that are below that, you're going to be known as that guy who does this really expensive, high value job for less money. You're going to become known as that guy. So you're going to have to slowly work your way up to that so you get to that point where everyone knows he's worth this much. If you want this done, like this is the value. And then that becomes not only do you know your value, but everyone else knows your value because you are
Hmm.
assertive with that choice. And
Yeah.
showing your self-worth can be crucial to growing as a professional. So I think that's something that you kind of have to look at as a gradual incline of getting to that point where you say I've made it. Is you being strong with your own decisions that will get you there.
Hmm.
You can't get pushed around or you're never going to
Yeah.
elevate yourself.
Yeah. I feel like because assertiveness is like being able, in its essence, being able just to say no, right?
Right.
When you want to say no, and it's very important for every individual to develop that aspect of our personality, because if you don't, um, all the negative effects that can originate from that you've mentioned, but also just in insatisfaction with who you will be, because now you're going to be able to be making decisions just to please others, but you're not going to be pleased with yourself,
Hmm.
because now and you'll become, like, in a way, bitter, because now that you've created this reputation for yourself that you're the guy that will always find a way to say yes to someone's offer, and you're always gonna have this bitter mindset, like why me, right? Or whatever the case may be. It's because you've allowed these gaps, within your values, and you've given up on it, and you can be pissed at the world or society or your friends or your girlfriend or whoever it is, because it was your choice not to say no when you needed to say no,
Hmm.
right? If you needed to say no to going out with your friends, or maybe choosing not to even join that crowd of friends, and pursuing another one because you saw that they weren't ambitious, whatever it is, uh, I think it's important for us to accountability, and also to have the responsibility to understand that every decision we make there, it comes with a cost, right?
Hmm.
And if you want the pleasure right now of going out and having the drinks and making those jokes with your friends, great. You want that small pleasure, great. But don't then, you know if you're going to sacrifice the ultimate goal that you had, which was to wake up next morning and become more fit with your lifestyle, whatever the case is, whatever the goal is, you don't be pissed at yourself tomorrow that you didn't do it, because you chose that small pleasure over the thing that you knew that was your priority. So I think without accountability, self accountability, you'll always, find ways to cheat yourself, because it's very easy to self-sabotage.
Yeah, and
uh
that's really interesting because I think looking at athletes is one of the best representations of how we can look at something that is a little bit kind of clear and easy to understand, that somebody, making the sacrifices to get to their ultimate goal, because it's so visual and we see the results live. If we're talking about somebody who's a basketball player and they make that game winning shot, we see that, and we see all of the things that come with the moment of them getting that. And we can also, at least now in this time, we can see them putting in that work.
mm,
And I can't tell you how many athletes I'm sure have not gone out and partied and hit the
mm,
gym. And that's why they're the best basketball player on the planet, because they took those sacrifices, like you just said, and they were assertive with their choices and said, no, I'm not going to go drink and stay out till 2 in the
yeah.
morning because I want to be up at 6
Mm,
putting up shots. So I think that can apply to every aspect of life. Is you have to make those choices and you have to hold yourself accountable, like you said. And I think someone who's struggling with that, there's ways where you can have somebody, at least at the beginning, hold like help you hold yourself accountable. So if you have trouble waking up and going to the gym, like you just can't get yourself to do it, work out with a buddy, and they'll hold you accountable, and then you'll hold them accountable, and then eventually
yeah.
you'll just start waking up at that time to work out at whatever time in the morning that you guys are going to, because over time you'll start to hold yourself accountable. So I think if people are struggling with that, you know there's people that can help you get the ball rolling, and eventually that habit will turn into you holding yourself accountable.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we feel like, we need to wake up tomorrow, and we've been waking up at 11 a.m. Oh, tomorrow I want to start waking up at 5. It's like, dude, that's a huge gap, right?
Yeah,
And if you really go to sleep like really thinking that you got so much self-control that you're gonna wake up, it's like, forget it, dude. Your body's already trained, even if your mind wanted, like,
yeah, that's
it's like
tough.
you need to start. That's why, like, you will start eventually becoming self-accountable. It's because it's going to become a habit, and the
Yeah.
habit, it's going to become subconscious, and your subconscious mind will work on it. So it's very important. And I think that the reason why we set these unrealistic goals for ourselves is because also of social media, because we're so focused on the end result that we forget to have patience with ourselves, and we forget to realize that it's a process. And if you
Hmm.
set out the goals, it doesn't necessarily need to take a year, but it's gonna have to take a couple months if you want to gain a new set of skills, or perform better your job, or have a better relationship with someone. If you're always angry, manage your anger issues better, you're gonna need to look for help. And help is so important, like as you said, right? And it's always even in the aspect of work. Collaborations can play a part in terms of your skill development, um, learning from people that have already been in the industry, or partnering up with someone that has more of the skills that maybe you need, as a creative person. But let's say you're too busy to the point that you didn't have the time towards devoting yourself to becoming a better businessman. Then you could, find a mentor or a partner or something that can come and fill in those, let's say, not weaknesses, but
Those gaps.
those gaps. And so that you can even focus on your skills, right? Because we're never going to be perfect at everything, be the best at all aspects of our lives. Sometimes it is better for us to collaborate so that we can become the expert at something, and then other people can come in and fill the gaps.
And
um,
I think a big thing is a lot of people are afraid to ask for help, or they feel like people will look at them less if they need help with something. And I think it's really funny that there's the kind of this, we put people on a pedestal that describe themselves as self-made. And I think that's such a funny term that exists, where people say, oh yeah, I started from nothing and I did this all by myself. And I think that's such a bad way to look at life.
It's there's
And
no one, man. There's no
there's
one.
no one. And even I would not even get to this stage of my career. Like I'm still light years away from where I want to be in terms of success. But even to this point where I have, some moderate success and I've worked with some big clients and all of that type of stuff, nothing would have happened without help from my family, friends, other people that I've met, mentors, all of that. If you're too self-conscious or arrogant to ask for help, you're not going to succeed. You need
Mm,
to be open and curious about learning. And I think
yeah.
like another like athlete example is, Kobe Bryant was always known for being the most curious guy in the room, always asking, how can I do this better? Why does that person do that? How did they figure that out? And I think the most successful people are often the most curious and aren't afraid to ask others for help and their knowledge. So I think a
Yeah.
lot people, at that stage where they feel stuck or they don't know what the next move there should be and they feel like they have to do it on their own, you don't.
Mm,
There's other
yeah.
people that have gone
Um,
through it that will help you.
that's so true, man. The pastor of the church that I go, Mosaic, Erwin McManus, he literally said that, the day that you start to change your life is the day you wake up and you yell help.
Hmm.
Because until that day, dude, you're always gonna be able to think that you're gonna be thinking and lying to yourself that you're gonna be able to get through all aspects of your life by yourself.
Which is
And I
just
don't, yeah,
unrealistic. It's not going to
yeah.
happen.
And I don't know if it's something from childhood, maybe you never had support from your parents, and now that's built in your subconscious, and you haven't dealt with things in your past that's made you uncomfortable and made you look at from that sort of perspective. But whatever it is, I think it's important for us to take the responsibility to, if we truly want to better ourselves in our work and become more authentic and become more competent in our work, it is our duty to ourselves to face whatever insecurities we have and find people to help us do it, uh, so that we can become better if truly we want to become better, because that's what it takes. Because sometimes success or becoming better, improving, it's not always mastering something. Sometimes it's releasing and overcoming stuff that we're holding ourselves onto, right? It's not always just, oh, I'm gonna become exercise more, but sometimes it's just, I need to eat better, whatever it is, right? Sometimes you wake up every morning, you hit the exercises at the gym so well, but when it comes to your food, you don't work. So you see, like, sometimes even if you continuously get better with exercising, it will never fix your let's say your physique, because
Right.
the food is still
You're
uh,
missing a crucial piece that's part of the whole puzzle. And if you, focus on one and ignore another, it's never going to come together like you expect.
and you're gonna
That's a really good point.
yeah, you're gonna start getting pissed, right? Because you're gonna be like, wow, I'm working so hard, like it's never getting there. And it's like, no, like you have blind spots, you need people in
Hmm.
your life to point them out to you because you can't
Right.
see.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. That's a really good point. And kind of piggybacking off of that, there's similar things with that same type of thing in business where, especially like for me, where like I was saying before, if you can be such a good photographer, but if you don't know, if you ignore that aspect of learning these other skills that make you a better overall business person, your photography or your whatever your field is, your skills could be through the roof. You could be technically sound in every aspect, and but if you ignore those other parts, there's going to be a huge differential. And that's the same thing of like, what if you worked out just your right bicep and not your left, and you're like, why do I feel so like uneven? How come I can lift things with this arm so much better? How come my left side's getting hurt all the time, or whatever? It's like you're missing a piece. You have to everything has to be in balance. And like you said, if you don't have someone showing you that or educating you on these imbalances in yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, they're going to catch up with you eventually.
Yeah, it's like, and it's, I think it's so delusional for an individual, right? And we're all guilty of it, because our ego makes us think that we're so much more competent than we actually are at points, certain times in our lives, and we can lie to ourselves that we've gotten everything handled, and that we can make so many conscious decisions that are to our best interest, and we're so disciplined to the point that we're gonna work out, and you're gonna do the 3 photo shoots, and you're gonna be able to do such a good job and put them in a contract that they're gonna love, that they're gonna reach out to you and work again with you. It's like, no, 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 drop all that, right? Like, take one step at a time. Realize that, okay, you've learned things as time have gone by, but there's so much more to learn. Because
Hmm.
that's something that I've realized, dude. The more I'm in the pursuit of self-improvement or knowledge or wisdom, becoming better, more intimate in the relationships that I have, the more I realize that I have to learn.
Hmm. I think for me personally, my mindset has always been, uh, I never want to peak. I never want to get to that point. I never want to feel like I've gotten to the top of my success mentally, physically, anything like that. I always want to feel like I'm on the upward incline getting better. Because the moment that you think you got to the top, the only way to go is down at that point. So I'd rather constantly be going up, slowly
Yeah.
feeling like I'm getting better, I'm still learning things. I'm never at
Hmm.
that point where I've made it. I think that's a really good just overall mindset for people to have is, you don't want to be that guy who peaked in high school. I always said to myself, like I don't want to peak until I'm way late in life and then I can say, yeah, like I'm 45 and I'm peaking now. Like that's always, I
Yeah.
think, a great mindset to have is that you're always on the upward, you're always still learning,
Mhm.
you're never in your prime. Like I feel like a lot of people get to this stage in their life where they become comfortable and they plateau in
That's
any
true.
aspect, and then after that it's really hard to from plateauing to go back into that upward incline. It usually plateaus and then starts to drop off, just in most
Hmm.
things in life. When you look at charts of you know people physically and all those things, there's an incline, there's a plateau, and then a decline. And I think if you have that mental attitude of that you're always on the incline, I think it can help you in all sorts of aspects of your life.
Wow,
And
dude.
it gives you a reason to not settle, because you can say, I'm the best at this. If you get to that point, then subconsciously you think, I don't need to learn anything else. But
Yeah,
there
you
should be a
mastered
never.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
there should.
mastered it. I don't need anything. Oh, you're gonna come to me and tell me how to do my work when I'm the
Yeah,
best at it.
you should. I think you should never get to that point where you become unappreciative of new information and new knowledge, even if it's in something that you think you're the best at. Like I think I'm very good at, editing photos and Photoshop and whatever those skills are that I have. I think I'm really good at it because I've spent 8+ years learning them. I'm still learning new things every single day because I never want to get stagnant in educating myself and having
Yeah,
new skills. So I think that's something that
yeah,
can benefit everybody in any aspect of their life, is that never think that you've gotten to the peak. You're always on the incline until you give up.
yeah. It's arrogant too, right? To think that you've gotten to the peak, because who has really,
I mean,
right?
I totally agree, and I think the thing is that we look at others who
The
are at the
comparison.
are at the upper echelon or whatever their craft is, and we say they've made it, they've peaked, they've gotten to the top.
Mm,
But I'm sure if you ask those people, they don't think that way, which is why they're at the top,
mm,
because they're always
mm,
saying, I want to learn more, I'm still hungry, I
mm.
still get up every day with that itch to get better.
Yeah, and those who have gotten to the quote unquote top, and are no longer there, are those that told themselves that they peaked.
Hmm. And that's really, like, I think especially prevalent in music, is that when you get those people that, like, let's say some rapper comes onto the scene, they get that number one song, and then we never
Yeah.
hear from them again because they
Yeah.
probably got to the top and they got that number one song, and they're like,
Mm.
I made it.
Yeah, and
I don't need to work on my
the
craft
ego.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, their ego comes into play, and then we never hear from them again because they don't continue to work on their craft. I think J. Cole had a really interesting point about that, where he basically was saying that while others were, super hyped that they got their first record deal or they made their first
And
100,000 or whatever, and then they kind of start to drop off and not take their craft as seriously. And he was like, I was looking at the next thing, I got a record deal and everyone was like telling him like, you made it, you did it, you finally got it. And he was like, I'm already past that. I'm looking at how I
it's like
can
that's
get the
just the
next thing.
start.
It's just a stepping
Yeah.
stone. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
people like look at a stepping stone as the top of the
Hmm.
mountain instead of
Mm.
just one piece to the ultimate,
Yeah.
you know,
And
the ultimate.
it's also like and looking from that perspective of just self-improvement and never reaching the top, a lot of people can also look at that and say, um that's not always true. You're kind of arrogant because now you're telling me that you always want more, right? You become greedy, you want more, you want more. Not necessarily. If your whole self-worth is in that process of like, I need more, I have to be better, blah blah blah, then sure, then like you need to work on yourself. But the point is to understand that there's never gonna be a point that we're gonna be the best at what we do, in terms of, to the point that there's nothing else to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because even with photography, I know very little about it. As I said, I just got one,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
like, forget it, dude. If it's taking you
It's like a
8
new
years,
language.
it's probably gonna take me like 30. But but essentially, like, I know that it continuously gets better, right? Like, something I learned about the A6400 is that, the recording time can pass 30 minutes or something like that, that other cameras, they stop right after
Mm-hmm.
recording at 30 minutes, and you need to like re-record a
Yep.
second, and this one can go on. And it's something that I was just like, wow, that's cool, they came out with one. And I try to understand it, like, why, right? Why are other cameras don't pass the limit of recording for 30 minutes? So it's a whole other language, and there's so much technology that keeps improving, and new ideas being put in place, and new concepts, new arts, new ideas in general, that if you stop, the reason why you're going to go down is because you're never going to adapt to what's new. You're just going to be left behind.
Yeah, and I think adapting, especially in this time where technology, like you said, is constantly changing. Every 6 months or a year, we have a new version of something with some new feature or whatever. And looking at technology as kind of that example is that if there was somebody who used to be a videographer or photographer successfully 20 plus years ago, and they never kind of grew with the technology as it went, it's like no one using film anymore. You can't be a professional photographer that shoots exclusively film. It's just not practical. It's not realistic. You have to learn and adapt with the technology. And that's in every field: marketing, advertising. Can you think about how crazy marketing was 20 years ago to what it is
Yeah.
now? It's like marketing 20 years ago was literally going to people's doors or like dropping off snail
Flyers.
mail. Like that's was
Flyers.
marketing. When was the last time that you dropped something off at somebody's house? Never. That doesn't exist anymore unless you're mailing out newsletters once a year. Like if you don't, if you're a marketing agency and you didn't adapt to this new technology of Facebook ads and
Mm.
SEO and all this crazy stuff that I'm sure you're relatively knowledgeable about at this point, like you're just gonna,
Yeah.
you're just gonna
Let me
never
laugh
gonna be
it.
able to
If
compete
you're
again.
if you're a business, yeah, if you're a business and you're thinking that you're gonna last, unless you're something like In and Out, there, which I don't think you should aim for that, because that's
there's
pretty
very
hard.
few there's very few
Yeah.
tried and true things that still exist because of how
Oh,
they
there.
then still
Yeah.
applies to now. There's
Mm.
not a lot that that apply to that model of let's just do it the way
Yeah,
it used to be.
exactly. And very few people can do that, right? And if you think you can, good luck. But I think
Best of
that,
luck.
yeah, but you should try to adapt and keep up with things that are happening. Now, what, just to end this part of the podcast, why do you think that, so many of us, we just choose to, like, not necessarily choose a career that everyone else is choosing, but just choose to do exactly the same process and copy other people, and do exactly like they do, instead of trying to be unique and figure it out our authenticity and what can we bring to the table as, Pedro or as Cody, to that industry or to your family or to, or to your friends, and be something different, like have your uniqueness, like that. We each have our gifts, right? Like, it's obvious. And I feel like a lot of us just become complacent. We never bring it to the table, which is, yeah,
Yeah, I think for one, it's easy. It's
very
easy
easy.
to see someone that's done something successfully and just try it and see. You say, oh, if they did it and it worked, why can't I just do that and it worked? So I think one of the biggest reasons that people kind of stray away, or it takes them longer to kind of get back to that point of being, authentic and unique and creating for yourself, is that uh, it's easy to just copy somebody else. Going off of that, though, as a creative, I think it's okay. This might be a little controversial for some people, but I think it's okay to copy other people if your sole intent is learning. I do this all the time where I see a skill or I see something and I say, how did they do that? I want to learn how they do that. And then once you learn that skill from somebody, then you can apply it in your own unique way to whatever you're doing. So
Yeah,
I think copying for education purposes is actually something that people should do more of, because
I agree.
if you look at something and you say that was amazing, like for example, somebody who did some crazy editing transition in some video and I was like, how did they do that? I want to learn that. That goes back to constantly wanting to better your craft if you see something that you don't know how to do, and also just being curious. And
Mm-hmm.
copying somebody is, if you're not putting that out and saying you copy their exact thing and then you put that exact thing out without, trying anything else, I think that's like not cool, because then you're literally just taking somebody's own time and effort and skill and curiousness and applying it to yourself, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to using it as a tool to better yourself. So I think that's one thing, is that
Yeah, I
look at
agree.
other people's successes and you can copy them, but do it to learn, as opposed to trying to use that model to just copy and paste it onto your own success.
Yeah, because, and I think that's part of authenticity, right? Because you need to be curious in order to explore that industry and its
Mm-hmm.
and the work being done there, so that you even can become more creative. Because the part of creativity, I think, is you imagining and you envisioning something, and you're trying to bring that into, like, existence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Into an actual final work. And that process is in that process of being creative, you're going to see other people having their own creativity, and by analyzing and trying to replicate that, you can gain a set of skills, and then that's going
Mm-hmm.
to complement the other ones that you already have to
Right.
yourself, that's unique to you.
And then
And
once you
that's going to,
gain those skills, then you can apply it to how you want to use it in your own
yeah,
version or whatever you're doing,
yeah.
instead of
And
just
another, but in another thing, right? As you said, it's so easy for us to just copy others. But, like, I truly believe that if you're copying someone that was authentic to creating whatever it is that you're trying to copy, that person's mindset was not like yours. Oh, let me copy someone because it's easy.
right.
So you're copying someone that's not even having the same mindset framework as you are having. And that's already gonna lead to failure to me,
Right.
because you're not being authentic to what you want to do. Again, you're looking at the end result and not the process. You're not looking at the growth. you're looking at what the growth can bring to your life, and
Right.
not actually being satisfied with the process of changing you as a person and your character as a human in the process of going through those hardships and exploration that we have to go both in our work, in our relationships, etc. So yeah, that's the way I think I see. I agree with you. It's very easy for us to do it, right? Because it's just, oh, this guy made whatever 100K a month doing this. Doesn't seem that hard. Let me go try it. And even if I was to make that decision, I'm gonna learn skills, and later on I may say, why did I ever do that? But you still learn something in the process. One, you learn that maybe you shouldn't have done that, so you shouldn't. And if it really made you upset or unsatisfied with who you are, well, at least you know what you don't want to do, which is something that you learn. And that's part of a failure too. It's not like you're always gonna make a right decision for yourself. You're gonna make some decisions that are stupid. You're gonna make some decisions that are good, and they're both gonna have learning lessons that hopefully you choose to learn, so that you don't repeat the bad ones later
Right.
on in the future again.
Right. And like I said earlier, failing is okay as long as you take something away from that failure. I think a lot of people, again, just make a mistake or fail, and then they just move on without analyzing and learning from their mistakes, so they don't make it again. And something that I've done when I've tried to mentor, like, friends of mine that are younger, that are still trying to come up into this, creative industry and all that type of things, is that I always express and explain my failures to them, because I don't want them to make the same mistakes that I did. And if, as long as they learn what I learned from it, then hopefully they'll make their own mistakes and learn from those, and not the ones that I already made. I think that's the biggest thing about having a mentor or someone else,
100%.
because they've made all these mistakes, but they've learned from it, and now they're teaching you how to not make those mistakes, so you can go
Yeah,
and make other mistakes and learn from that. So
they're
I think
teaching you
that's
the lessons from the mistakes without
right.
having to go through the pain of
Right.
actually
Because you're gonna
making a
you're gonna
mistake.
go through the pain of making mistakes, but if you can narrow down those mistakes, that's I think that's like the ultimate gift a mentor can give you, is that they're never going to take away all your failures. But if they can narrow it down and say, hey, you'll make mistakes, but not these ones, because I'm teaching you my mistake, that's the ultimate gift someone can give you. And I think, just in general, going back to, being unique, I think that's another thing that people want. This kind of, they see some successful person and they see how, like, their style or their aesthetic or whatever you want to call it is so buttoned up and clean and perfect, and you look at it and you
Like a
see,
sexy lifestyle, right?
yeah. Or even if you're talking about something like that, but even, let's say, someone who has an artist, has a visual style, and you see one of their works outside of them showing it to you, and you say, oh, I know who shot that, or I know who painted that, because they have a style, and you look at it and you say, I know exactly who did that. That takes a really long time. And if you aren't okay with going through that whole process of building your own aesthetic and your style and all of those type of things, you have to be okay with that process. And going back to kind of saying, learning from others, and if you see something you like, you can try and replicate it, and those type of things. I think that's all part of the process of soaking up inspiration, combining them into what will eventually become your own unique
Yeah,
style.
agree, 100%. Now, what would you say it's a habit that you've um you know applied into your life that has in a massive way impacted improvement in your overall life?
I would say kind of the biggest and easiest thing I could say is just consistently exercising. I think that's something that might seem really, like, simple to a lot of people that are already, exercising consistently and stuff like that. But, I went into college and I had played sports in high school, and I was like, athletic, but not strong in any capacity. Like you could just push me over. I was just like, I had no muscle tone or anything like that. And I made a point to myself to, I went to the University of Oregon, so I was lucky to have all these different athletic classes that I could take. And I made it a point to myself that I was going to take 2 different athletic classes every single quarter. And that kind of built the backbone of me, you know, one, making myself get up and like going running in the winter time, which is like 2 things that I
Wow,
hate,
that's
you
good,
know,
man.
waking up early and running are 2 things that I'm not a fan of. But I wanted to force myself to do something uncomfortable, which I think down the line has really helped me just in general. One, it just builds your confidence in all aspects of your life. If you do something consistently and you see results over time, I think that's really rewarding. And 2, being physically healthy drastically affects your mental health. I think
I
a
agree.
lot of people
100%.
I think a,
100%.
I think a lot of people that are potentially unhappy with themselves don't exercise, and if they did, they would see that change, because not only does it, like, if you're thinking about it on like a bio biochemical level, like it releases endorphins, you know, gets your heart rate up, you see results over time, it makes you feel better, just, and then that can snowball into all other aspects of your life, where if you start doing consistently going to the gym and that becomes a habit, and then you do
Dude,
other things that
I
also
I'll
become
tell
a
you what.
habit.
I'll tell you what. The best days that I've had with in terms of productivity, my level of like overall happiness, not in terms of happiness that I mean that I didn't have bad news, more like of a joy and being able to handle stress and moments maybe of suffering or disappointment, were days that I woke up in the morning and I went to the gym at like 6 a.m.
Yep.
and I went to the steam room right after, and then I took a cold shower. There's no days can be compared to those. If there's a day that I just wake up late and I don't exercise, wow, then a bad news comes and something else comes, and then it's like, because you've become complacent, like subconsciously you're already in a way unsatisfied with for the fact that you didn't exercise, which you
Hmm.
shouldn't, if unless you like set out to exercise 5 days a week, and for the past 2 months you have only exercised 2 times, then yes, you should be tough on yourself and
Yeah.
realize that there's change. But if you messed up once, you failed, man, like don't also be self-compassionate towards yourself. It's human. You're never going to be perfect. uh, but at the same time, it's really helped me. 100% exercising, it's a huge part of my life as well.
Yeah, because it's like, especially, I also work out pre quarantine when I was waking up at a consistently early time. Um, that was the one thing that like made me get up, go to the gym. You get that in, and then you already have your first success. You already have your first win of the day. At after 8 o'clock, you already check the first thing off your list, and then gets you to want to keep going and check more
Yep.
things off for that day. And then by the end of the day, and if you do that for days and days and days in a row, and like you said, then it becomes a habit, and then you don't do it for one day, then you look at yourself and be like, you're disappointed because you were so proud of that
Consistent.
success and that
Yeah.
consistency. And then that's when it becomes, a built-in part of your life. And I think that will change anybody's life. If they're in a tough place right now, just work
Hmm.
out, and you'll
I agree.
everything will change, I think, from that.
Yeah. I hit a workout earlier today, dude.
Same.
Did is fire. I actually did one that my friend Mason and Maddox. I actually interviewed them before. It's gonna be the podcast before this.
Nice.
And they have a YouTube channel and they posted a workout and I did it. Dude, wow, killed me.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if you're really into reading, but if you are, if you've read, what's a favorite book of yours?
So
That
overall, I'm not the biggest reader. As a photographer, I'm a visual learner, so I really soak in information by watching things a lot better. But
maybe it
based
can be
on
something you've watched.
based on like our conversation and just like how we are approaching things in terms of character and those type of things. One book that I did read a while ago that a friend's dad gave me was The Four Agreements, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. And I just think that is a really great book for anybody to read, just to kind of get some basic, ideas of how you should approach life. And the biggest thing that I took away from it is like, people are always going to react at you for whatever reason, positive, negatively, all that type of stuff. And you can't control how people react to you. How, if people are upset, they yell at you, anything like that. But you can control how you react back. And I think if you have that ideology in your head that nobody is doing anything like personally to you, everyone's going through something, and you have that, you know, thought in your head, how you approach interactions with others will change drastically. You can never control how they react, but you can control how you react. And I think that's a
Yeah.
really good just like point to always keep in mind when you're dealing with people professionally, personally, relationships, whatever it may
Yeah.
be.
That's good, dude. That's a really powerful lesson, right? Even on my last Instagram post, I said that in the end, right? Our circumstances don't define us, but our reaction to them do.
Yep, that's
Um,
exactly it.
and it's something that I've learned to really mentally and consciously apply into my life. It's
Hmm.
not easy all the time, right?
No,
Because when someone is yelling at you, you're like, "Why are you yelling at me?"
right.
Right? So it's normal, but you can become better over time,
Yeah.
and the results are incredible as well of how able you are to experience different emotions and
And just be more
circumstances.
compassionate and understanding. And, you know, there can always be a misunderstanding with a split second reaction from somebody or to somebody. And if you just have that idea in your mind that they're not attacking you personally, you don't know what they're going through,
Mm,
all of that, it will aid you in many interactions with people. And that will ultimately lead to you being more successful because you're understanding where people are coming from and not taking
yeah,
everything personally.
that's true, man. It's so true because, and I think that in order for us to have empathy and really understand that others are going through something and don't take anything personally, the only thing that we really need to believe that that's true is look at ourselves in the mirror, because we are going through something
Right. Of
and we sometimes overreact to people.
course.
So if we understand ourselves, we'll be able to be more compassionate towards others. Now, just to finalize, how can people reach you?
So you can
um
reach me social media. All my social media is my name, Cody Rappaport. You can go to my website, codyrappaport.com. You can see all of my work, my portfolio work, all the clients that I've worked with, my video work, all that sorts of stuff. Posting new content on Instagram, Facebook, relatively daily, and just trying to share the knowledge that I have. That's something that I've been focusing on more lately, is trying to educate people on how they can do certain skills in terms of photo, video, Photoshop, all that type of stuff. So if you're trying to learn more about how to do that type of stuff, that's kind of the, the content that I'm working on right now.
that's good, man. I'll make sure that I'll attach the links to your social medias in the description of the podcast.
Cool.
All right, my man. Thank you for coming. I appreciate.
Thanks for having me, man.
You've given
Very
definitely
insightful
some
talk. Yeah.
bomb. Yeah, it was good, dude. Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Have a
Thanks,
good
man.
one.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Perfect. I think it stopped on my end.
Uh,
Did it
okay.
stop